Hi, everybody. I'm Clint Kalin. I'm the PA Residency Director at the University of New Mexico. And this would have been the suit you saw me wear at Quiz Bowl. And while I'm really disappointed we didn't get to celebrate in person, I do have a treat for you. What follows are excerpts from an interview I did with Arnold Zigman and Terry Mize. He didn't get to record a great introduction, but Arnold was in the 1980 class of the LA County PA Residency, the first PA residency in the country, and he went on to be the program director from 1981 to 1996. Joining him is Terry Mize, a good friend of mine, who was his first resident in the class of 1981. I hope you enjoy some of what they have to say, and I think what they have to say really carries on with what we're doing now in PA residencies. Enjoy.
Despite the fact I was in the second class, I wound up writing the curriculum. We were uh, we were trying to get an affiliation agreement with the medical school at USC, make it more formalized. And so as part of that, we had to submit a formal curriculum. And so literally, I wrote the curriculum about 2/3 of the way through my residency. But in terms of actual history, the one person that I have to go back and really have great reverence for and really thank is Gail Anderson. Gail was the chair and the visionary and a great supporter, not only for the residency training, but for SEMPA. I mean, he was a big backer in terms of that. And history on Gail. Gail was a hospital corpsman in World War II. And so he knew that it didn't take a physician to do all the things that needed to be done in the emergency department. And Gail was also, he was the founder of the Department of Emergency Medicine. And he used to love to tell the story of how he became the founder because he came from an OBGYN background. And he was asked by the dean if he would be interested in doing this. And Gail at that time had a tremendous background as a researcher and a publisher and a phenomenal set of hands as a surgeon and just on and on. And so for him to take on this new specialty, and I mean, if you, I don't know how much of a feeling you have for the actual history of emergency medicine as a specialty, but you think back to before Terry's time and my time, I was a nurse before I became a PA, and back in those days, the ER was staffed by the drunks and the residents and folks who were totally unqualified to be practicing emergency medicine, and essentially the lowlifes of medicine. And LSUSC was the first academic residency to come along, and Gail was the leader. So he came in as a visionary, and he came in very, very strong because of his background, making demands of the School of Medicine and of the dean. Wound up with a phenomenal piece of real estate inside the Med Center in terms of his office and everything. And so when he came up with the idea of PAs, the profession was still very early in its inception. And he actually started with PAs in the emergency department. And after doing that for, I guess, a couple of years, and I don't remember all the details, but the state came along and said, hey, you can't do this. I mean, these people, they need to get some sort of formal training. And so he was behind the formation of the USCPA program, which then took a lot of the people who had been practicing as PAs and put them through formal education. So, Lee Slager, who Terry remembers quite well, was in that first class, wound up with about 4 years worth of education before he finally became an official PA in emergency medicine. And there actually was a 6-month residency for a couple of years prior to our 1-year residency, which started. So the 1-year residency became the formal official PA residency at LSUSC Med Center, and it started in 1979. And I was in the class of 1980-81. And somewhere shortly after I started, some foolish person in the residency that I was in recognized that I might have some kind of ability to continue on in a leadership position, which I certainly didn't know about. You know, I think about when I first graduated PA school, and I can't remember who said it, and it's not like it's so profound, but the idea of the secret of patient care is caring for the patient. It's something that has to be internal, plain and simple. And, you know, why do you go into this profession? You know, you're going in to make money? Oh, come on. You know, it's you go into it because you love people and because you want to care for people. And, you know, in terms of dealing with the county patient, first of all, the education that you get, these people let us practice on their bodies. They make a sacrifice whether they realize it or not, because we come in sometimes pretty stupid, and we learn on them. And so I think it's a sacred trust. It's really a sacred trust. And you know, I never practiced in private practice. My entire career was working with the county, well, with the exception of working student health before I came to the county. But you know, basically, these folks are in need. They are so much in need, and you recognize it in every single patient that you see. You know, I remember, did you ever know Gail Carruthers, Terry? Name sound familiar?
Carruthers, yeah.
Gail was, you know, ER resident when I was training, and she wound up going in full-time at Long Beach Memorial. A tiny, tiny little lady who walked around with a smile on her face. And I don't care who the patient was. I don't care if they came in covered in dirt, covered in feces, abusive, alcoholic, psychotic, you know, just, you know, like our average patient at the county. And Gail would walk in with a smile on her face and walk out with a smile on her face. And she would care for that patient. And she just set an example for me, for sure. There are some patients that stick with you, and not always because of the most positive experience. Being Jewish, I used to try to work clinically every Christmas to give folks, give them the day off. And so it's one particular Christmas, I was working in 1060, which Terry knows what that is. It's our emergency ambulatory area, or emergency trauma area, rather. And getting ready to get off shift. You remember Robert Martin?
No.
He was a nurse. He took over all the ACLS training. Black fellow who we actually shared an office for a number of years. I'm still good friends with him. And anyway, a lady comes walking in the back door 1060, and that's like 5 minutes before the end of shift on a day shift in 1060. Blue, non-breathing baby.
Oh.
Drops the baby on the desk in front of the clerk, you know, just screaming in hysterics. And so Bob grabs a gurney, I grab the kid, put the kid on the gurney, and we go speed of light into 1350. I wound up actually intubating the kid. And, you know, we're doing everything we can in the way of resuscitation. And not succeeding. And, you know, at a certain point, the docs in there said, you know, Zigman, why don't you take off? You know, we'll take it from here. And the kid did not survive. Well, we come to find out the kid had been dead for about 7 hours. And it was a child abuse. The boyfriend had basically beat the kid to death. But it was just, you know, it was Christmas Day, and just to have that happen at the end of the shift. And it's, you know, I can't make that go out of my head. And that's just one case. I mean, there are many, many cases that I could give you like that are just, you know, the nightmare cases that never go away.
Yeah.
And you just, you know, you learn from them, and you grow, and it's part of the practice. But you know, but there are people that you save, and there are people who actually say thank you. Not many, but there are some who remember the experience in the ER, and you know, you could probably count them on one hand after a full career, but it's you remember them. A very easy question to answer. No 2 days are the same. Every day is different. Every day was new challenges, whether I was working administratively, whether I was teaching, or whether I was working a clinical shift. It was that variety of every day. I never knew what in the world I was going to be facing, and I enjoyed going in and tackling that challenge. And that to me was the exciting part of the career.
Terry's seizing or passed out.
No, it's, something similar, I think is really similar to what Arnold said. And I think it, for me, it's the interaction with the people you work with. Because they're going to change on a daily basis. But if you take the time, you will learn something from each and every person you meet. Whether it's a tech or the respiratory therapist or the folks over in CT, or you're attending, or the medical student. You're gonna learn something different by those interactions. And that's probably true of every specialty, but I can't think of a place where it is more so than working as part of that team in the ED. And you remember those people forever. Arnold remembers people forever. I remember people I worked with, you know, from coast to coast. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, you know, and it's not just the PAs and the docs. It's the nurses and the techs and the people that you just, you know, became very close to as part of your family. So yeah, there's the patients too, but patients don't change. DKA doesn't change. Alcohol withdrawal doesn't change. The way we treat it may change a little. You know, there are certain things that do change. But
I think it may have been a Christmas that I went in the morning, and you know, when you hit the shift in the morning, there's always one or two that are sort of left over from the night shift, and they're left over because nobody really wanted to take care of them. And so this was
hasn't changed.
This was an IND. It was a perirectal abscess IND, right? You know, just your favorite, your absolute favorite. And, you know, I pick it up and I figure, okay, well, let's just try to be cheerful. It's Christmas morning. Go in there. And so I walk in, and this guy is like, he's got a blanket pulled up over his head, you know, one of the county blankets. And, you know, so I try to be very polite and very nice and, you know, give him a little shake. And he goes, they threw fish on me. I go, excuse me? He goes, they threw a barrel of fish on me. So I go walking out and I grab the doc and I go, okay, this is a very interesting guy. I don't know if he's totally psychotic or what's going on. And this is what he said. He goes, no, it actually happened in 1350. Some guy came in with a barrel of fish in the middle of the night, and threw a barrel of fish on this guy. Honest to God. I told that story to Mike Orlinsky. He said he was going to put it in the book.
Yeah. How about you, Terry?
I think some of the biggest laughs I had were tricks I played on people. So not so much county patients, but one of my favorite clerks was working one night in the ER. And at that time we had hemocoat cards that you had to drop the stuff on. Remember that? And nobody could ever find the developer. So, you know, I went in behind the curtain, came out with a glove on, and I had a baby Ruth in my pocket. And I decided to play with, I think her name was Laurie Ann, and I rubbed some baby Ruth on my finger. And I said, Laurie Ann, where can I, and I'm walking around like this with this stuff on my finger. And I said, where's the developer? And she said, I don't know, Terry. And I said, never mind. And I licked it. And she almost fell out of her chair.
If you had to give, say, a resident that was halfway through their training, some advice. Could be a couple pieces of advice, could be one piece of advice. What would you tell them?
Stick with it. And I say that I was going to tell the story earlier. Uh, it was the end of December, my year as a resident, and I had just gone up on the old D&E rotation, which Terry remembers quite well. D&E, diagnosis and evaluation, which we used to have 3 rotations up there. It was a brutal rotation. You're on every third for 18 hours. And these were the worst of the worst patients in terms of the drunks and the ODs and the suicide attempts and the psychotics, and buried in there somewhere might be a subdural hematoma that you had to find. And anyway, this was my first night of second rotation on D&E. And the doc that I was working with, I go up there and he introduces himself and he says, "I've heard real good things about you, Zigman," which I knew I was in trouble right away. I could not draw blood that night. I could not do anything right. Every time, I mean, I had to call him in behind me after doing, 14 sticks on somebody trying to draw blood. Nothing worked for me that night. And I remember calling home and telling my wife, I don't think I belong here. I think this is not for me. I think that I should, and she goes, "Arnold, calm down." My amazing wife. And about that time, the patient stopped. There was no more patients coming up to the floor. I was able to actually go to sleep. I was able to get a full night's sleep. Like I tell you, somebody was watching out for me. I woke up in the morning and everything was right. And so in other words, I guess the moral of the story is you're going to have some bad times. You're going to have some times where just things are just not working at all. You got to hang in there. You got to hang in there. So that's what I would tell the residents, that, you do a year of residency, there's going to be some times that you're going to question yourself. You're going to wonder, why in the hell am I doing this? Am I really cut out for it? Give it another try, give it another day, take it one day at a time and see what happens, because you just got to hang in there, plug away.
Terry, if you had to give your 18-year-old or however old you were self halfway through residency, what words of wisdom would you share with them?
Can I give you three very short ones?
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a sense of humor. If you don't have it now, in order to last in emergency medicine, you've got to have a sense of humor. You got to laugh at yourself, your colleagues, not the patients, but you got to laugh. You can't make this stuff up. So it is funny. The second thing is develop a passion outside of medicine. Something that's needed and something you're passionate about. And Clint, for me, it was the Migrant Farm Worker Project and working with homeless people in low-income area. That was my passion because it was needed and I loved doing it. And it doesn't matter for these residents, they don't have to do that. They can work at an animal shelter. They can walk dogs. They can do whatever, but something outside of the hospital, outside of the ED. Lord knows there's a lot of need out there. Okay, feed some, during COVID, take some groceries to the little lady down the street. But I think the final thing is humility. I think as residents, I remember I left LA and went to Denver. And I didn't feel bulletproof. I felt confident that I could pretty much manage. Nothing's really going to shock me. But you have to learn that you still will make mistakes. You still have to be humble. Patients have a way of humbling you. And you cannot develop an attitude that you know it all. As a graduate of UNM or Yale or Einstein or whatever, just because you graduated from there, you got a lot to learn, and be very humble. And I am still humble 43 years after I graduated PA school.